Control flow statements and decision making in Python programming language. Introduction. Hello everyone. In this tutorial, we will learn about the topic of control flow statements and decision making in the Python programming language. Specifically, we will look at number 1, the if elif else ladder, number 2, the for loop, number 3, the while loop, number 4, we will also be introduced to important keywords and more insight into Python programming language. The if statement. Drawing from our past experience with Python syntax, do you remember the tutorial in which we learned about comparison operators? If so, you will remember that comparison operators provide us with a boolean true or false as output. With that being said, there will be certain instances in your program in which you will require a certain action or event to take place when a certain condition is met. The if statement allows us to do just that. In Python programming language, the if statement will allow us to test a condition to see if it evaluates to true or false, and if true, the code within the block will be executed. Now, I should mention another important feature of Python, indentation. You see, in Python programming language, when the condition we are testing is met or achieved, the code that falls into that condition being true will be executed. We refer to the condition and the lines of code that fall inside it as a block of code. Do not worry over this, it will make much more sense when we have seen an if statement in action. The usual way in which indentation is done is by using 4 spaces, that is, by pressing tab on the keyboard. However, you may indent to as many spaces as you like as long as the indentation for that particular block of code is constant. The general syntax for the if statement in Python is as follows. If condition colon statements to be executed. If statement keyword condition, this refers to the condition or conditions that are to be tested. Colon to denote beginning of code block. Lines of code to be executed if the condition or conditions are true get indented, thus forming a block of code. Statements to be executed. This refers to the statements to be executed if the condition or conditions are met. Example. Print program start. X is equal to int input, please enter a number. If x is greater than 0 and x is less than 100, colon, print you have entered a positive integer less than 100. Print program end. Looking at our previous example, we are able to see number 1, using the print function, we first print the message program start to the screen. Number 2, next we ask the user for an input. We have enclosed the input function in an int function, thereby reinforcing the notion that we want to have the user enter input of integer data type. We also prompt the user for input by saying please enter a number. The input that is entered by the user is being stored in a variable called x. Number 3, we then see an if statement in the code. This if statement is present to check whether the input entered by the user meets certain conditions or not. If the number entered by the user x is greater than 0 and less than 100, we will enter the if statement block of code and execute the lines within. If the conditions are met, we will print a message to the user which says, you have entered a positive integer less than 100. Number 4, we will thereafter print a message that says program end. The example we have been given is a very good way for us to understand the concept of the if statement in Python and for us to get a higher level of understanding of the way in which Python scripts compile and get executed. To test the program, I will enter -92 as input. Program start, please enter a number, -92, program end. Looking at the above image, one is able to see that I have entered negative 92 as input, and the code inside the if statement did not get executed. But why is this so? It is because upon entering my input, the program reached the if statement, which proceeded to check whether the conditions are met or not. I entered negative 92. Therefore, x is greater than 0 evaluates to false, and x is less than 100 evaluates to true. However, the if block has been bypassed because we have used the logical AND operator. As we know from previous lessons, the AND operator requires all subconditions to evaluate to true for the entire condition to become true. Therefore, since the entire condition evaluated to false, the code in the if statement has not been executed and the if block has been bypassed. I shall try the program again, this time entering 13 as input. The output that is received is as follows. Program start, please enter a number 13. You have entered a positive integer less than 100. Program end. Looking at the image above, we are able to see that I have ran the program and entered 13 as my input. Notice that this time, the lines of code in the if statement block has been executed. Why? It is because upon entering my input, the program proceeded to the if statement block of code. The first task was to check whether the conditions are met. Specifically, I entered 13. Therefore, x is greater than 13 evaluated to true, and x is less than 100 also evaluated to true. Hence, with all subconditions being true, the entire AND condition evaluated to true. This allowed for the lines of code inside the if statement to be accessed and executed, which accounts for the message we can see on the screen. Upon reaching the end of the lines of code inside the if block, the program has exited the block and continued execution, which is why we also see the message program end on the screen. This reinforces the way in which decision making works in the Python programming language, as well as the fact that Python programs compile and get executed from a top to down, left to right approach. Essentially, we have learnt that if one would like to base the outcome of a program on a test that is performed on a value, one would utilize the if statement.